And Suzanne, you have some fresh news for us. Now, this interview that just aired with Gail Kravetz was done late last week, and there have been some new developments. The crowdfunding has gone very well, to say the least, correct?
Absolutely. It's been shocking but wonderful. Our original first goal was to reach $20,000, and over a period of from now until the end of May, and we actually reached that goal in 6 days.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Good for Gail Kravetz.
It's so wonderful. She has such a great project, and I think one of the reasons that it's so successful in my experience with crowdfunding for books is that it's just sort of a perfect storm. All of the right elements were there at the right time.
Mm-hmm. Now, as I'm doing the interview with Gail, and we talked about it, I talked about it with Gail, and I wonder, okay, you're doing this crowdfunding to sell your book, to gather enough money to publish this book, and I'm wondering to myself, well, why should I contribute to Gail Kravetz's book? But it's when you're crowdfunding a book, like you've explained to me off the air, you're essentially pre-selling copies of the book, right?
Correct.
So how does crowdfunding work? And you were the one years ago when you were doing some crowdfunding to publish a book that explained the whole crowdfunding thing to me. Since then, I've seen people trying to crowdfund all sorts of things, including their mortgages, which is highly offensive. But you explained to me the whole crowdfunding thing. It's something that's taken off over the past few years, and it works for many people, right? Explain it to us. What's the premise?
Absolutely. It works for millions of people and organizations and causes. And basically it's a very simple premise behind it. That is that rather than trying to raise funds for whatever you're doing, a lot of money from one or two investors, which is very difficult to do for most people, especially if you're a brand new startup, small business, or have a project venture, especially in the creative arts. Crowdfunding does it a different way. It says we'll look at that same target goal, and what we'll do is look at seeing how many people we can get interested to contribute small amounts. So the phrase that's often used is pennies from many, as opposed to going on, Shark Tank or Dragon's Den and trying to raise a lot of money from one or two people.
Tell me some success stories that you've had with crowdfunding.
Yeah, well, we've had really good success. I mean, we've had some projects that didn't reach their fiscal goal or their financial goal, but I still consider them quite successful because one of the things that crowdfunding is evolving into, it's gone well beyond the early days when the purpose was just to raise some short-term cash for a specific project or a business or an activity. It's become, especially on the professional side, for rewards-based crowdfunding, when you actually, buy a product or a service, it's become actually part of the ongoing business strategy. So crowdfunding can do all kinds of things. I'll just speak to my industry. What I use it for in publishing is it's not only a great way to capitalize the production of a book, which is very costly. Most people don't realize how costly. But it's a great way to start getting the word out early about a book that's coming down the pike, help build audience, help build buzz, help build media interest. All of these things are very important prior to launching a book. So it becomes a real significant part of the strategy of the company that's publishing the book or the author that's publishing.
So now what happens with Gail Kravetz? What happens with her book now?
Well, what we did yesterday, actually, because we officially reached over the 20,000 goal 2 nights ago, was to launch what we had promised people we were planning to do if we reached the first goal, to add what are called stretch goals, which are additional amounts of money to finance the book doing even more things. So, for example, we had the original goal included a book, hardcover and softcover, 400 books that would be black and white on the inside. And of course, there's a number of photographs because this is a history book. And so ideally, what we wanted to do was be able to produce those photos in color, which is an additional cost. So we're now able to reach for that goal. And additionally, to add to the initial print run of 400 and 400 softcover and hardcover, we're now going to be looking at reaching to do 500 softcover and 1,000 hardcover. In addition, we've added some money in there if somebody decides they want to sponsor an author tour for Gail when she comes out with the book in the winter of 2018. So there's all of these kinds of things that are costs to especially an independent author. They don't get paid for the years that it takes them to research and interview and write a book. And yet it takes up a great part of their life hourly commitment. All she wants to do is to be able to get the book out into the world. So with doing it independently, we think one of the most sustainable and ethical ways to do that is by pre-selling the book or allowing or creating opportunities for sponsorship of other activities. So for example, one of the things we've already done is had a group purchase a perk that we had on the site for $4,000 to sponsor getting a copy of the book into every 9 to 12 high school library, because of its historical significance in the history of the province. So someone felt that it was very important to make sure that got done. Gale can't afford to do that, so they're going to do that. So all of these are really creative business extensions of how we capitalize getting books out there.
Well, if every Saskatchewan Party supporter in the province were to buy a book, you'll need to print a whole lot more.
Well, that's the hope, right? And again, Gale has a personal connection, as you know, and I'm sure you've talked about in the interview,
Sure.
to the history of the party, being married to one of the former leaders and one of the original 8 that started the party. But Gale is, as a former history and English teacher, is very interested in creating a very objective and factual history of this important part of the political fabric of Saskatchewan and of Canada. So her goal is and she is doing an enormous amount of independent research and interviews, not just with people in the South Party, but outside the party. So this is not meant to be a book that promotes the party, although it possibly could, but it's meant to be an actual history of what actually happened.
Sure.
So she's one of the really neat things about this book, though, that makes it different from other typical history books, is that she's going to be adding in to the side some personal reflections on how that historical time impacted her family and other people that she knew that were involved in its formation, which is an inside look that we often don't get when people like academics or policy analysts write political history books.
Mm-hmm. Suzanne Paschall, our guest on the Heartland at Noon. She's a chief coach at FreshVoice, author coaching and training, and also an expert on crowdfunding. And I'm wondering, did Gail Kravets reach out to you to get the help with the crowdfunding?
Yes, she did. Well, she actually reached out to me to help coach and mentor her through the process of writing the book. This is her first book, and I work with authors on an ongoing basis to do that, and also to edit the book. So it became a logical extension for me to act as production coordinator as well. And when we got to the point of talking about the budget and all of that, I suggested that we look at crowdfunding, and so that's how that transpired.
Now, I guarantee there's somebody listening right now that's thinking, man, I could use some help with some crowdfunding. How do they go about getting in touch with you and getting more information, Suzanne?
Well, I think the easiest is probably to visit the website, which is freshvoice.guru, and all of the contact information is there and a lot of information. I also do a blog series called the ABCs of Crowdfunding that people can sign up for and get those in their inboxes. I don't write a crowdfunding piece every week, but probably once or twice a month I do pieces, and there's quite a reserve library of previous pieces that I've done. And there's a lot of really good and helpful information in those that might answer some people's questions as well.
Suzanne Paschall, Chief Coach at FreshVoice, author coaching and training, still helping Saskatchewan authors, despite the fact you've moved from Saskatoon to Seattle.
Yes, well, I was a Saskatchewanite Saskatchewanian for 18 years. So, yeah, that kind of dies hard. I'm still following the Rough Riders.
Good. Well, I sure appreciate your time. Anything else you'd like to add today?
Just one quick thing, and I think that sometimes people aren't really aware of how big the crowdfunding industry is globally. And I just want to give you one quick stat and see how it hits you. There is one crowdfunding platform, of which there are many, Kickstarter, which was the original crowdfunding platform, that just released some results by industry. So for the first time, we've been able to see how many projects were actually funded through Kickstarter in publishing itself. And the latest information shows that there have been over 10,000 successfully funded projects for books, which just kind of shocks me even, and that the bulk of those campaign goals were between $1,000 and $20,000. So, but there is one very specific, interesting example where a book about women that was written for young girls just recently raised over $1 million in a crowdfunding campaign.